Good afternoon, everyone. I've got a lot to get through this afternoon, so I'm going to make this intro as brief as I can. Firstly, it's a real honour to be back here for a second time, so my sincerest thanks to D'Angela for allowing me to participate, for giving me the opportunity to participate in these events and her continued support and generosity. It's very much appreciated. So my name is Declan McCarthy. I'm from Sheffield, England, so I've come a long way. Those of you who were here last year may remember I gave a presentation on the time track 777 9311, and in that thank you very much, thank you, appreciate it. And in that presentation, I considered the relationship between the musical and lyrical components of that particular track and the broader interplay of form and content within that song. And this afternoon, I'm going to be applying that mode of critical engagement to a song that needs no introduction. In my talk, It's Time We All Reach Out for Something New, Endings, Beginnings, and Purple Rain. So as the title of this presentation suggests, my talk today will be centered around the notion of endings and beginnings as they relate to the title track of Prince's sixth full-length studio album, Purple Rain, released in the summer of 1984. As such, it seems only fitting and thematically appropriate to begin this presentation by discussing the end of Purple Rain, namely the orchestral coda, which draws the track, as well as the accompanying album to a close. Can I just check, when I talk about the orchestral coda, everybody knows the string section at the end of the song? Yep, that's great. Though subsequently edited into the near 9-minute form we all know so well, this iteration of Purple Rain is largely sourced from a recording of the track's debut performance during a benefit concert held at First Avenue on the 3rd of August 1983. While editing and finessing this live recording for release, this closing piece of orchestration was later added to the mix at the behest of Prince on either the 15th or 18th of August 1983 during 2 sessions at Sunset Sound in Hollywood, California. Documented in the manner depicted here by studio session archivist Dwayne Tudall, these orchestral overdubs were conducted over the course of these 2 sessions under the supervision of Prince himself and keyboardist Lisa Coleman. Consisting of violin, viola, and cello respectively, this concluding coda features performances from Novi Navog, Susie Katayama, and David Coleman, the brother of the aforementioned Lisa Coleman. Speaking for myself, this portion of Purple Rain has long intrigued me for a number of reasons. However, despite this, it was only fairly recently that I finally decided to delve into the musical composition of this closing orchestral passage. Fortunately, during the course of my research, I very swiftly stumbled across a blog post from the 7th of September 2021, authored by a user named Benjamin Gaidios, and apologies for most likely butchering the pronunciation of that surname. In his post, Benjamin presents a comprehensive 5-part transcription for the orchestral coda of Purple Rain, with notation given for each of the outro's 3 constituent musical instruments, violin, viola, and cello respectively. However, while conducting this transcription, Benjamin made a further intriguing discovery, namely that the sequence is a symmetrical musical palindrome. He states, individual instruments play symmetric phrases. Each voice consists of a series of 9 notes, played forward, then rewound. Comprehending musical notation in the fashion presented here can be a somewhat esoteric and impenetrable affair for those who cannot read sheet music. Furthermore, the symmetrical nature of this passage is not as readily apparent as if the same musical information were presented in an alternate manner. As such, I elected to translate this transcription into a letter-based form of musical notation and filtered this secondary transcription through the music production and performance software Ableton Live, which resulted in the following 5 diagrams. Consequently, from a visual perspective, we are now able to see much more clearly the notion of musical symmetry Benjamin highlights in his original post. Each individual instrument performs a 9-note musical passage before retracing this exact same progression in reverse and then repeating this entire 18-note sequence for a second and final time. Though this is the case with 4 of the instruments here, the third cello is doing something a little differently. In a purely visual sense, is the repeating peaks and valleys of the violin and viola that best depict the symmetrical nature of this orchestral passage. However, what Benjamin does not consider in his original post is that there is an alternate way in which we could read and interpret the musical symmetry at play here. In addition to being symmetrical in nature, From a musical standpoint, this closing string-based coda is simultaneously a kind of repeating cycle, one that at its conclusion returns to its initial point of origin. As such, the musical movement and progression of this orchestral coda is one that is inherently circular in nature, with the first note of each sequence simultaneously being the last. Put simply, at the end of the passage, it returns to the beginning. This is all well and good, you might say, but what does any of this have to do with the broader concerns of Purple Rain? Well, to say that Purple Rain is a somewhat mysterious composition from a lyrical perspective would be quite an understatement. Yet the track's profoundly enigmatic aura has undeniably proven to be fertile ground for a great number of theories, both in print and online, as to who or what Purple Rain might actually be about. However, in the midst of this overwhelming speculative discourse, critical consensus does appear to have coalesced around a handful of core themes that seemingly permeate the song, chief among these being the notion of redemptive salvation. Indeed, critics such as Torre have noted that Purple Rain concerns classic Christian themes, such as salvation, redemption, and deliverance, while Joseph Vogel likewise classifies the track as being among Prince's celebratory redemptive songs. In the Christian sense of the word, the act of redemption is predicated on the receiver in question being cleansed and absolved of their prior sins, their newfound salvation demarcating an era of personal and spiritual renewal, in short, a new beginning. One of the many means through which absolution and redemption can be attained in the Christian faith is via the ritual of baptism, a religious ceremony during which water is used to purify and cleanse the spirit of the receiver. For instance, John chapter 3 verse 5 states that only one born of water and of the Spirit can enter the kingdom of God, while Acts chapter 2 verse 16 describes the act of baptism as a means of washing away thy sins. Additionally, Romans chapter 6 verses 3 to 4 suggests that the practice implicitly invokes the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ, and that those who are baptized are likewise resurrected in a spiritual manner to walk in the newness of life. Consequently, given how preoccupied Purple Rain ostensibly is with water-based imagery, it's hardly surprising that many critics have noted the baptismal connotations of both the track's title and repeated refrain. Questlove observes that the narrative of Purple Rain is one of forgiveness, so bathing in the purple rain could be a spiritual baptism of sorts, while Touré similarly believes that the track evidently concerns redemption through baptism. Likewise, in a contemporaneous interview with People magazine in 1984, Revolution guitarist Wendy Melvoin stated that she believed the image of Purple Rain symbolized a new beginning. Purple, the sky at dawn; rain, the cleansing factor. While Melvoin's comments explicitly refer to the title of the Purple Rain feature film, her reading is of course likewise applicable to all the invocations of the term, and the title track of the accompanying album is certainly no exception. Furthermore, Melvoin's supposition that the titular image of Purple Rain symbolically denotes a new beginning certainly chimes with the broader critical consensus surrounding the principal preoccupations of the track. Such readings are ultimately supported and borne out by even the most cursory of consultations with the track's lyrical content, transcribed here from the album's accompanying line notes. Indeed, the second verse closes with an explicit invocation of an ending. It's such a shame our friendship had to end, while the third verse opens with the recognition that times are changing and that it's time we all reach out for something new. Furthermore, the baptismal evocations noted by the likes of Questlove and Melvoin are most evident in the preponderance of water-based imagery that permeates the song at a lyrical level. Naturally, chief amongst these invocations is the track's repeated titular refrain, but this baptismal preoccupation is perhaps most keenly felt in the final line of the track's first verse, "I only wanted to see you bathing in the purple rain." As such, regardless of who may be the true subject of the track, the pervasive notion that redemptive baptism is the modus operandi of Purple Rain would certainly appear to be a profoundly credible one. From a thematic standpoint, the lyrical terrain of Purple Rain evidently charts a transition of either a personal or spiritual nature, with the track's implicitly baptismal titular image serving as a means by which one can be cleansed and renewed. When considered against the backdrop of these broader concerns, the circular nature of the track's closing orchestral coda seems even more pertinent to the larger preoccupations of Purple Rain. As we explored earlier, the cyclical nature of this passage enacts a movement that resolves at the same point at which it began, one that concludes by returning the listener to the same notes with which the sequence opened. Such a musical motion hews strikingly close to the larger lyrical motion of Purple Rain, with the track's 3 verses likewise charting a return to a state of beginning in a redemptive and baptismal sense. Consequently, in much the same way that Purple Rain lyrically culminates with the advent of a new beginning, so too does the track's orchestrated coda, the progression being one that concludes by ending in the same manner in which it began. In regards to the manner in which the running order of Purple Rain was painstakingly compiled, Prince's former recording engineer, Susan Rogers, notes that sequencing for the record was a big deal and that the album was very carefully arranged. As such, I'd like for us to consider the extent to which the climactic position Purple Rain occupies within the running order of the album further engages with the track's latent fascination with endings and new beginnings. For instance, how significant is it that after a lengthy compilation process, Prince elected to close Purple Rain with the respective album's title track? Given the aforementioned lyrical and preoccupations of Purple Rain, I would venture to say very significant. Likewise, Touré posits that the running order of Purple Rain takes the listener through the structure of a religious event, opening with Prince sermonizing in Let's Go Crazy and concluding with baptism and forgiveness in Purple Rain. Consequently, the significance of Prince electing to conclude Purple Rain with the album's redemptive title track cannot be overstated. From a structural standpoint, affording Purple Rain such a position invokes the track's latent climactic connotations, the album concluding with a song that is itself concerned with endings and new beginnings in a manner previously detailed. Put simply, the album itself symbolically ends with a return to a state of beginning. However, before the 9-track configuration of Purple Rain was finalized into the arrangement that we are now all so familiar with, a number of prior alternate configurations were assembled. One such configuration is reported to have been compiled on the 7th of November 1983, supposedly having been sourced from an early test pressing of the record. Per Nilsson lists the constituent tracks of this test pressing in the following manner, the implication being that this is also the running order for this alleged configuration. In regards to their own record of this test pressing, Prince Vault likewise replicates Nilsson's running order, but further delineates the record's track listing across the album's 2 respective sides in the fashion presented here. As such, if we labor under the assumption this running order is in fact an accurate account of the track listing of this supposed configuration, Prince's decision to arrange Purple Rain in this manner is far from insignificant. In the track listing depicted here, Purple Rain is notably not listed as the album's closing number. Instead, the track occupies the 6th position in the running order, which results in the song opening the album's 2nd side as opposed to closing it. However, it is worth noting that Susan Rogers believes that this particular test pressing and configuration were a little premature, born out of haste due to Prince's anxious desire just to get the record done. Her comments implicitly suggest that this arrangement was never seriously considered to be the running order of the final project, and that this test pressing was compiled as a means for Prince to hear, what's my record going to sound like? Nevertheless, given the track's evident fascination with endings and new beginnings, the notion that Prince at one stage appears to have entertained the idea of opening the album's 2nd side with Purple Rain is certainly an intriguing one. Without delving too deeply into the storage capacity of various forms of physical media, a 12-inch long-playing vinyl record is largely capable of storing around 50 minutes worth of music. However, due to the limitations of the format, this storage capacity is then divided across both sides of the vinyl disc, with each face of the record being able to hold approximately 25 minutes worth of music, respectively. So, for example, we can see here in the finalized version and finalized vinyl release of Purple Rain, each side roughly has about 22 minutes worth of music, which makes a total runtime of about 44 minutes. As such, the manner in which listeners engage with the vinyl record as a musical format differs significantly from the likes of other formats, such as the compact disc or digital streaming, both of which possess notably larger storage capabilities. Listening to a full-length studio album on vinyl requires the listener to perform the action depicted here, placing the stylus at the outer edge of the disc and allowing it to move in a concentric fashion towards the center of the record. Once the stylist has completed this concentric movement, the listener is then required to turn the record and repeat the exact same action in order to hear the remaining half of the musical content held on the other side of the disc. Due to this ritualistic quirk, born from the inherent restrictions of the format, to a certain extent, the first song on the second side of an LP could be considered to be a quasi-secondary opening track. In much the same way that the first track of a record's first side introduces the listener to the album in question, the first track of side 2 reintroduces them to the same album. In short, a new beginning. Consequently, however premature Susan Rogers may believe this November configuration of Purple Rain to be, the fact that Prince once seemingly considered opening the album's second side with its title track is certainly worthy of note. By affording Purple Rain such a position, the track symbolically and structurally acts as a new beginning for the record in the performative manner previously detailed. As such, given the track's latent thematic concerns, the significance of arranging Purple Rain in such a fashion should certainly be somewhat self-evident. However, as we noted earlier, the compilation process for Purple Rain would prove to be a painstaking and meticulous one for all concerned, and a subsequent configuration of the album is reported to have been compiled on the 23rd of March 1984. While the running order of that particular iteration is currently unknown, what we do know is that 3 days later, on the 26th of March, a further configuration was assembled in the manner depicted here. In this subsequent configuration, the running order of which is sourced from Prince Vault and corroborated by Dwayne Tudall, it would appear Prince no longer considered Purple Rain suitable as the opening track for the album's second side. Instead, the track had definitively been relocated to serve as the record's climactic number, a position it would then maintain until the soundtrack was finally released 3 months later. Nevertheless, the notion that Prince apparently only ever considered Purple Rain suitable for these two respective positions within the album's running order is certainly a thought-provoking one. Both positions actively engage with the track's evident fascination with endings and new beginnings and a structural capacity, with Purple Rain either opening the album's second side or serving as the record's anthemic closing number. Consequently, the fact that Prince seemingly never entertained the idea of arranging Purple Rain in any alternate position only serves to reinforce the track's aforementioned preoccupations. However, this barely even scratches the surface. Aside from the track's musical and lyrical components and the manner in which Prince arranged the surrounding album across all its prior configurations, there are numerous other instances where Purple Rain exhibited an evident fascination with endings and new beginnings. While time precludes me from exploring these further occasions in any great detail, I hope this presentation has at least offered a brief glimpse into one of the principal thematic concerns of Purple Rain and the various ways in which that preoccupation evidently manifests itself. Thank you.